The 2017 Minibike British Championship picked up exactly where it left off at round 8, with wet weather the theme at round 9 in Kettering. A second visit to the Champs Park venue for the series, but completely different conditions, and certainly no sign of the dust that provided its own unique challenge earlier this season. In the final weekend of the campaign, and with championship honours on the line, let's take a look at what happened in the support categories. Max Pridmore and Harry Lee renewed their rivalry over top spot in the kids 50cc class, duelling as they did at round 5 in Kettering earlier in the 2017 campaign. But Lee, already within touching distance of the under-9s championship, was eventually unbeaten with 3 race victories. Pridmore, the only rider to have beaten Lee in the overalls this season, was unable to add to wins from rounds 3 and 7, despite proving the master of the opening lap in both races 1 and 2. Lee's victory in the first moto, with the only other championship contender, Ben Johnston, down in 4th, left him just a matter of minor points away from the crown, and with a second race victory in succession, Lee had sewn up the title with 4 races to spare. Twice he had to make his way past Max Pridmore to take the race lead, and the gap was a mere 5 seconds between the pair at the checkered flag second time out. The third moto was by far the most straightforward, the crown already sealed, and Lee needing just seconds to take a 7th overall win of the campaign. But he jetted away from the start this time to seal a 5th maximum score of the season. Matty Banks closes in on Ben Johnston for second position after his retirement in the second moto, but the gap between them remains significant at 37 points ahead of the final round. Charlie Joyner and Max Pridmore, whilst in mathematical contention for a championship podium place, look unlikely to bridge the gap. Nonetheless, it's another podium finish for Pridmore behind the newly crowned kids 50cc champion, Harry Lee. Ewan Goddard ensured that the Youth 125cc trophy will be decided in the final round of the season, after he claimed a first victory since round 2 over championship rival Louis Dutton. Dutton was the comfortable gate-to-flag winner in the first moto and maintained the bulk of a championship advantage that stands at over 50 points. Defeats in the second and third motos left him defeated for only the second time in 2017. Meanwhile, in the 9 to 11 age group, Senna Ace Summers further extended his championship lead ahead of the final round, despite finishing only second in class at round 9. Like Dutton in the older age group, Summers picked up the 25 points in his opening ride, in the process passing main championship rival Harry Streeter. It was Leo Vols who made the biggest impression as the day went on. Ewan Goddard's bold pass on Louis Dutton on the opening lap of the second moto was a sign of things to come in the 12 to 14 age group. Goddard further aided in his pursuit of victory, with Dutton stalling the machine on lap 2 and having to recover from 6th. He was back up to second in class after a lap 4 pass on James Lee, but finished 11 seconds short of Goddard as the scores on the day were levelled. Senna Ace Summers, meanwhile, remained on top in the 9 to 11s by 4 points ahead of the final moto, despite finishing second to Leo Vols, who put in his best performance of the season. Vols' second overall win of the campaign was certainly aided by some misfortune for Senna Ace Summers, who fell on the opening turn of the third moto, but put in a good damage limitation ride for 4th in class and second overall to maintain his championship position. The battle up front, meanwhile, was settled without incident, Ewan Goddard with the pace advantage in the wet, and Louis Dutton spending too long dispatching James Lee for second position and unable to make up the 5-second deficit to the leader. Ewan Goddard's second victory of the campaign only shaves 3 points off his championship deficit, with Louis Dutton 52 points up ahead of the final round of the season. Meanwhile, a consistent day for James Lee extends his advantage in the battle for bronze to 48 points. A rare defeat for Louis Dutton, Ewan Goddard with the pace in tricky wet conditions in the afternoon to take wins in the second and third motos. In the 9 to 11 age group, Senna Ace Summers adds another 3 points to his championship advantage over Harry Streeter, despite finishing runner-up to Leo Vols in the overall. Vols now just sits 7 points back from Streeter in the standings, with that battle for second looking of greatest interest in the final round. With yet another podium finish, Senna A. Summers is within touching distance of victory in the under-12s, while Leo Vols has the momentum in the race for second, having outscored Harry Streeter in 4 successive rounds. Just 9 points will separate the top 2 in the championship table going into the final round of the season in the 110cc category. But it was Matthew Pocock, 5th in the series standings, who dominated at round 9. Most of the action unfolded behind Pocock, who won each of the opening 2 motos, the first by 13 seconds. Behind him, the next 5 riders over the line were separated by less than 5 seconds at the checkered flag, and by much less than that for the majority of the race. Championship leader Craig Rose was in the thick of the action, at one stage dropping as far back as 6th before eventually taking 3rd. Crucially, his main championship rival, Jack Titterell, was never in front of him, but exercised a damaged imitation ride with 4th. Matthew Pocock won the 2nd moto as well, but this time from behind as Craig Rose fell from the lead in wet conditions, and then a lap later Piers Skinner retired in the same place. Things seemed to be going in Rose's favour as he recovered well to 2nd position, and after 2 races he had only conceded minor points to riders well back from him in the standings overall. But in race 3, Rose suffered a mechanical retirement in the opening sequence of turns after taking the whole shot, and saw his championship advantage reduced to just 9 points. Jack Titterell seized his opportunity to maximum effect with a race victory. Piers Skinner relegated to 2nd, but holding on well from Matthew Pocock, dropped back as the race went on with mechanical problems. Despite managing just 3rd place in his final outing, 2 race wins were enough for Matthew Pocock to hold on for a first overall victory of the season. With Craig Rose's 3rd moto retirement, the presence of Jack Titterell and Piers Skinner on the podium served to further tighten the series standings. The top 5 will all enter the final round of the 110cc championship in mathematical contention for the title. Jack Titterell's 21-point gains on Craig Rose at round 9, guaranteeing a close fight for the number 1 plate. Chris Ayres joined the 140cc category for the first time in 2017, alongside his pro racing, immediately dominated with 3 victories. The action was more interesting in the context of the championship fights, the respective class leaders each suffering a disastrous opening lap in the first moto. 140cc series leader Ashley Gorman dropped from 3rd to 19th on lap 1 as he stalled his machine. Then Masters leader Dale Howard was brought down by his main rival Lee Mitchell, in the process dropping back to 14th. Gorman's only contender in terms of the 2017 series, Luke Humphrey, failed to capitalise to maximum extent. Scott Joyner enjoying an excellent ride to take 2nd behind Ayres, but Humphrey did well to claim 3rd in class, having sat outside of the top 10 in the early stages, getting the better of Simon Vols and Daniel Foreman in successive laps. Chris Ayres was again the race winner 2nd time out, but this time he was forced to work for the victory, coming through from 4th in the early stages of the race to notch a 2nd set of 25 points. Meanwhile, Luke Humphrey again made a late pass on Daniel Foreman, this time for 4th in class as he kept his challenge for a place on the podium. Main rival Ashley Gorman made back some of the ground lost in his first outing, but could only manage 3rd as he spent the majority of the race trying to find a way past Simon Vols, who put in his best ride of the day with 2nd. Luke Humphrey and Simon Vols therefore came into the 3rd moto on 38 points apiece. Ashley Gorman 4 points behind them and a place on the day's podium. But Gorman made back the deficit to climb to the podium on countback after a runner-up position behind Chris Ayres in the final race. And Luke Humphrey stood alongside him as he got the better of Simon Vols for 3rd in class further back. Close finish to round 9 overall, with 3 riders separated by just 2 points in pursuit of the final 2 steps on the podium behind Chris Ayres. That means little change in the championship standings, other than 2 dropped places for Scott Joyner as a result of 2 non-finishes in the wet. Chris Ayres takes top spot on his first 140cc appearance, while behind him on the day, Ashley Gorman only concedes 2 points in the championship fight to Luke Humphrey and still leads by a massive 62 points. A 3rd successive podium finish for Simon Vols, who once again only narrowly misses out on a 2nd position. But the focus is on the continued duel for top spot between Lee Mitchell and Dale Howard, who leads by 21 points ahead of the final round. Round 9, though, belongs to Lee Mitchell, taking his 5th win of the season and gaining back 7 points in the Masters Championship fights. Meanwhile, Christopher Rose arrived in Kettering with the Veteran Championship already sewn up, but the fight for 2nd position in the series standings intensified behind him. Jason Gutteridge put in his best result of the season, while Colin Blackwell failed to make the 50-point mark for a 2nd successive round. But while the chase for 2nd and 3rd continues into the last day of the season, Christopher Rose can celebrate a 7th win of the campaign and a championship crown in the veteran category. Round 9 of the 2017 Minibike British Championship, with 3 riders still in contention for the title. If Bradley Pocock outscores Frank Van Homert and Blaine Blackwell by 3 points over the course of the 3 races that comprise round 9, he will be champion for the first time with a round to spare. Bradley Pocock and the favourites lining up on the inner portion of the circuit here for the first of 3 pro motos at the penultimate event of the 2017 campaign. It's Pocock with the 73-point championship advantage, defending with 2 rounds remaining. We are underway with race 1. Good start from Blaine Blackwell in particular. Not a bad jump from Bradley Pocock either. Frank Van Homert working hard to get into contention. He moves through into 3rd place, challenged on the inside by Andrew Luke and by Dominic Foreman on the outside. Foreman moving through now into 4th position as they go side by side for 2nd. Blaine Blackwell holds on for the moment behind Bradley Pocock. It's been an excellent break for the number 57 rider. 4th position is with Dominic Foreman as Frank Van Homert cuts to the inside here, trying to find a way past Blaine Blackwell. For the moment, he's relegated down to 3rd position. Meanwhile, cutting through down the inside there, Chris Ayres getting the better of both Andrew Luke and Pat Crump, having worked his way through from the fringes of the top 10 in the early stages. So Ayres making up 2 positions there on 2 turns. Andrew Luke going backwards drops 3 positions, and Pat Crump holds station in P6, but will now start to come under some pressure from the recovering Jody Burton. Burton moving through. He was outside of the top 10 early on, took 9th coming across the timing beam, and has already made further progress from that, gaining ground as they come through the rhythm section onto the tail of Pat Crump now. This is the race for 6th position between Pat Crump and Jody Burton. Pat Crump holds the racing line. Burton cutting down to the inside as they come to the end of the infield section. Side by side, Burton goes up for the outside run. Crump has the racing line and moves across quite forcefully to defend that position. Behind Jody Burton, it is still Andrew Luke, so Luke hasn't dropped any further since dropping those 3 places. Burton still working hard. Crump still holding down the inside line as they come into the final turn and now complete lap number 1. So it's Bradley Pocock leading the way. 3 seconds his advantage at the end of the first full lap. A 1 minute 9.2 compared to a 1 minute 11.6 for Blaine Blackwell, and Frank Van Homert over a second back now from 2nd position. Fights further down the order. That's Kevin Nielsen making his way through and just getting the better of Craig Newton. Newton sitting in 12th position. So Craig Newton was trying to recover a place there at the expense of Kevin Nielsen, who held on forcefully. Next in line for Nielsen to pass is Joe Banks if he wants to make his way into the top 10. But the focus in terms of the championship is very much on Frank Van Homert this weekend, to see if he can make up any of the necessary ground and try and take his 4th consecutive title. The fight ongoing between Kevin Nielsen, also Craig Newton and Joe Banks. Banks holding 10th position at the moment. Nielsen tries to find a way through, and Newton has just mugged him down the inside line, gets the better of Kevin Nielsen and through for 11th position. Meanwhile, up front, another new fastest lap of the race from Bradley Pocock, a 1 minute 9.1. Blaine Blackwell conceding another 2 seconds to him on that lap, but Frank Van Homert dropping further back from Blaine Blackwell. The top 3 are spreading out. Chris Ayres maintaining pace with Dominic Foreman, who sits in 4th position, but he's got 2 seconds to make up on him. And it's a long way back down the field that you see the first gap that's less than a second, all the way down to the fringes of the top 10, where we've got Banks, Newton and Lamb at the moment occupying those minor places. But it's Bradley Pocock who's got off to the perfect start to the race weekend, where he's defending the 2017 championship lead And at the moment, Blaine Blackwell is doing him a huge favour, because this would give Bradley Pocock an extra 5 points over his main series rival, Frank Van Homert, who's seen diminishing returns in recent rounds. In terms of overall victories, Bradley Pocock and Frank Van Homert are tied on 4 apiece, but it's race winners that have been crucial, and Bradley Pocock has taken 14 of them this season compared to just 8 for Frank Van Homert, and that's what's enabled him to stack up his leading margin. That race continuing further down the order. It really is all going on in the fight for 10th place, and Craig Newton goes down, and Kevin Nielsen has got stuck in with him there at the start of the infield section. Newton is back up and will shortly be running, but that's cost both him and Kevin Nielsen, who dropped to 13th position quite severely. David Lamb coming through at their expense. He's now on the tail of Joe Banks, and that fight for 10th place continues. Things working out quite well for Joe Banks as his rivals take one another out. Craig Newton goes down, having already moved up into that 11th place, and David Lamb is the next rider to try and strike after a disastrous opening lap, and both of them are trailing at the moment against James Cook, who sits in 9th place. Andrew Luke, with a new personal best on the previous lap, sits 8th, and well adrift now already of Pat Crump and Jody Burton in their race for 6th and 7th positions. Blaine Blackwell losing a little bit of ground on that last lap around to Frank Van Homert, a 1 minute 11.5 compared to a 1 minute 11.8 for Blackwell. The gap visibly closing further here, and Frank Van Homert may not be too long in waiting to get onto the tail of Blaine Blackwell and try and force his way past. Van Homert then with around about a second's gap now to Blaine Blackwell, who sits in P2. Bradley Pocock first over the line once again to complete lap number 5. 8.5 seconds up now on Blaine Blackwell, but as I said, it's just a second now, the gap between 2nd and 3rd places. Van Homert dropping a 10th of a second on that previous lap. The gap oscillating between Blackwell in 2nd and Van Homert in 3rd. A new personal best lap last time around from Dominic Foreman as he tries to see off the challenge of Chris Ayres, who still sits in 5th place. Jody Burton in 6th, and then that fight further down the order for 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th on the fringes of the top 10. Well, the top 3 positions have started to settle down. The only movement you'd expect to see is for 2nd and 3rd, with Frank Van Homert desperate to try and get past Blaine Blackwell here and chase down Bradley Pocock, but I can't see him doing it. 8.5 seconds, the gap between the top 2 positions. You have to look a long way further down the order to find a race that's closer, although David Lamb, with a new personal best there on lap number 5, moves into the top 10 at the expense of Joe Banks, and is now swiftly gaining on James Cook as well, so it shouldn't be long before David Lamb starts to make further progress up through the field. The focus here for the moment in terms of the race and in terms of the championship is for 2nd position behind Bradley Pocock. Blaine Blackwell versus Frank Van Homert. Dominic Foreman keeping up the pace with them as well, to be fair. Foreman sitting in 4th position, and Chris Ayres in turn is trying to reel him in from P5. The positions 2 to 5 are fairly closely packed together on the circuit, although saying that, Blaine Blackwell's done well to gain another 0.8 of a second there on lap number 6, so he is able to open his margin to 2 seconds now over Frank Van Homert. But there's not too much in it, as I said, from 2nd to 5th. It's a whole lot closer than that further back down the order as we rejoin Kevin Nielsen trying to make his way back through the pack. Remember, he was caught in that fall earlier on for Craig Newton, who's down in 17th position at the moment, while Kevin Nielsen not faring too much better than that. He was 15th last time they crossed the start-finish line, albeit setting a new personal best, and he has made further progress since then. Just seeing the 368 Lee Springthorpe, who is out of the action and retiring from the race, but the battle continuing on around him, and that does mean that we're not going to have too many non-scorers from this race, of course, as the top 20 riders will be scoring here. Down on the inside line there, the 168 Luke Burton. Kevin Nielsen comes around him. Nielsen then now through into 14th position. Matthew Chamberlain, the next rider to attack the race further down the order. The race up front looking largely settled. Here is Frank Van Homert up front in 3rd place behind Blaine Blackwell, the race leader Bradley Pocock. These 2 riders now about to start to negotiate that battle further down the order. Things could get a little bit close as they weave their way through traffic. There is Blaine Blackwell. He's just come past Joe Banks, so he's lapped all the way up to 11th position now. Banks just outside the top 10. 10th place occupied by James Cook after being passed previously by David Lamb, as I suggested was pretty likely. Bradley Pocock heading his way round to complete another lap. This race looking all too comfortable for him. He's backed off the pace over the last couple of laps or so, and it's still over 7 seconds, the gap to his nearest rival. A 1 minute 12 there is some way adrift of his personal best set earlier in the race, also the fastest lap of the race, of course. Blaine Blackwell now coming over the line, 10 seconds adrift of Bradley Pocock. So things looking settled in terms of top spot, and Frank Van Homert in turn almost 5 seconds down on Blackwell. So if things stay as they are, then Pocock will take first blood here at round number 9. He'll also take a 5-point advantage over Frank Van Homert that will make his championship lead up to 78 points. And that will mean that Frank Van Homert must beat Bradley Pocock over the course of the remaining 2 races here at round number 9, or his championship hopes will be extinguished. Frank Van Homert, remember, the champion from 2014 to 2016, defending title holder, #1 plate holder, and Bradley Pocock, the 2016 runner-up, looking to go one better this season. After Frank Van Homert's disasters in Mildenhall, things haven't turned around in his favour so far here at round number 9, as Blaine Blackwell sits between Frank Van Homert and Bradley Pocock, the race leader. He just comes around the outside now to lap Andrew Luke. Luke in 8th position at the moment, ahead of David Lamb, and with quite a big advantage actually to Lamb behind him as well. Bradley Pocock, the race leader, has lapped all the way up to Pat Crump, who sits in 7th position, a lap down, as I said, and with Andrew Luke and David Lamb behind him. Blaine Blackwell 12 seconds adrift now of the race leader. Frank Van Homert still in 3rd. Dominic Foreman in 4th. It's been a pretty steady and quiet race for him, but he has held off Chris Ayres, who has largely been able to match his pace, but not been able to gain in any ground since seeing off Jody Burton and co in the early part of the race. Burton, once he got ahead of Pat Crump for 6th position, has been able to make no further progress either, so the positions in the top 5 look settled as per the early part of the race, with Van Homert making an initial charge onto the tail of Blaine Blackwell, getting that gap down to below 2 seconds, but since then he has dropped back, and it's now 7 seconds between Blaine Blackwell, who sits in 2nd, and Frank Van Homert in 3rd. So what will this do in terms of the championship? Well, it'll close Blaine Blackwell a couple of points further onto the tail of Frank Van Homert, but the only major movement is seeing Bradley Pocock home for yet another race win, his 15th of the 2017 campaign, as he moves one step closer to the title this season. Frank Van Homert couldn't do anything about his pace, nor could he close in sufficiently on Blaine Blackwell, who comes over the line to take 2nd. But Frank Van Homert, crucially in the context of the championship, has got back up and running with decent points for 3rd. He sees his championship rival, though, gain another 5 points and walk away successful once again. Frank Van Homert's wait for another race victory will have to continue. Bradley Pocock taking the checkered flag, with Blaine Blackwell in 2nd, then Frank Van Homert in 3rd, and the gap between the top 2 in the series standings is up to 78 points. After Bradley Pocock's 15th 2017 race victory, Frank Van Homert must now make up 3 points at least over the 2 remaining races here at round number 9 to avoid the British rider sealing the title here this afternoon. Bradley Pocock leading the way then. Frank Van Homert in 2nd position in the series standings, could only manage 3rd place first time out. Blaine Blackwell getting the better of him. Also watch out for Dominic Foreman, who finished a close 4th position. Jody Burton and Chris Ayres, the supporting acts. But there's no doubt about it, in terms of the championship, it's Bradley Pocock who appears to have one hand on the title. The 2016 runner-up aiming to go one better. The riders waiting for the 5-second board to drop, and now for the gate to do the same, and we're underway and racing with the 2nd moto here at round number 9. Fast start on the inside from Frank Van Homert, much improved start as well from Jody Burton. The 2 championship favourites clash on the inside line on the first turn, and that enables Blaine Blackwell to come through and challenge, and Blackwell gets the better of Bradley Pocock and moves through into 2nd position. Frank Van Homert then making the early break. Down the inside now comes Bradley Pocock, trying to make the move on Blaine Blackwell, who looks over his shoulder, now moves to cover, stuck up on the outside line. He's made himself vulnerable. Bradley Pocock with the block pass comes through for 2nd place. Blackwell, though, builds up his momentum. He's up on the outside line, pulls level and pulls clear. Side-by-side racing there for 2nd position. Excellent stuff, but it is Blaine Blackwell who manages to come back through, and we're in a familiar position to what we were in the first race, really, but in reverse. Frank Van Homert was third position behind Blackwell and his main championship rival. As further down the order, Foreman comes through down the inside. He's making a recovery from outside of the top 10, and now up the inside, and down goes Bradley Pocock. Pocock, trying to recover positions, has gone down on the infield section of the circuit and sees his position gradually dropping as various riders from further down the order come flying around the outside of him. Bradley Pocock there dropping to within touching distance of Craig Dundee, all the way down in 17th position. Bradley Pocock is going to have to work very hard for this one. It certainly turned the race on its head. It could turn the championship on its head as well, as Pocock gets caught up trying to maintain and recover positions. Around the outside he comes to make another move. He'll scythe quickly through the pack. We've seen it before this season. He has a significant pace advantage as he tries to come around Luke Burton and does so fairly easily. Joe Banks is next on his hit list. He cuts the inside. We've got a faller on the inside line there on the final sequence of turns. That's Kevin Nielsen, I think, who's again got caught up in a melee, and that makes it easy for Bradley Pocock to gain another position. He's now down on the inside line of Joe Banks, who comes over the line in 8th position, and Pocock from 17th place has already managed to recover up into P8, getting the better of Joe Banks. Banks sitting one place ahead now of Pat Crump, who worked his way through into 10th position at the end of lap number 2. So it's Frank Van Homert who leads. 5 seconds up now on Blaine Blackwell in second. Jody Burton sits third. Dominic Foreman is just over half a second behind him. That's where I expect the closest race to be very shortly, between Burton in P3 and Foreman in P4. Bradley Pocock continuing to make progress through the field, as you might expect. Craig Newton, the latest rider that is under threat there, having sat in P7. There is Dominic Foreman attempting to gain ground, and Bradley Pocock moving into the picture now. He's right on the tail of David Lamb, who sits in 6th position. Lamb in his own fight with Andrew Luke as the rain really teems down here in Kettering. Pocock makes a pass down the inside of David Lamb, so that's him now through up into 6th position. 5th place is the next target, sliding as he goes for the inside line to pass Andrew Luke, and Luke will leave himself vulnerable. Lamb tries to bundle his way past as well, but can't do so. Luke holds the racing line, or comes back to the racing line, I should say, after Bradley Pocock moves his way through, back up into the top 5. Now those overtaking manoeuvres will become somewhat tougher, of course. Frank Van Homert, the race leader, with a 6-second margin over Blaine Blackwell in second. Frank Van Homert looking almost a different rider this time around compared to race number 1. Jody Burton dropping 3 seconds a lap back from the top 2. He is 4.5 seconds in arrears now of Blaine Blackwell, who sits in second place. Dominic Foreman 2 seconds further back last time around, although it looks as though Foreman may have gained a bit of ground on this lap so far. Bradley Pocock up into P5 has got Dominic Foreman as his next target. But what a strong start it has been from Frank Van Homert as we see that fight further down the order now. Burton, Foreman and Pocock gaining on the pair. Oh, and Bradley Pocock's gone down again. Can you believe it? Well, that just goes to show how slippery things have become out on the circuit, because that was a really innocuous fall from Bradley Pocock. He just slid off the side of the machine, coming through the infield section, whilst gaining on Jody Burton and Dominic Foreman, and that's going to wipe out his progress from the last lap, really. He was almost 5 seconds faster than Dominic Foreman on the last lap around, and he's going to have cost himself a lot of that time on this lap with that fall. Foreman gaining on Jody Burton. He will be the favourite for 3rd position. He's gained quite swiftly on this lap so far. Burton holding the position for now. What will be his advantage as he crosses the line? Less than half a second. So Dominic Foreman with a new personal best of 1 minute 23.8 despite the worsening weather conditions. A 1 minute 25.5 for Jody Burton, who has seen that advantage narrow and may swiftly see that position taken away from him as well. Burton still holding it for the moment. Foreman coming down the hill with a great turn of speed, and he's got his wheels in line quite nicely, but he overslides, and Dominic Foreman almost comes down, and that hands 4th position to Bradley Pocock. Frustration for Dominic Foreman while he was going off after Jody Burton. Well, this race has been a lot more lively than the first one, where the top 5 positions settled down in the early stages of the race. This race has been anything but settled, and it's largely thanks to the wet weather conditions that we've seen greeting us here in Kettering. Well, wet weather has already played a significant part in this championship, turning the series on its head in Mildenhall with all sorts of disasters and disappointments for Frank Van Homert. Van Homert looks set to take the checkered flag. He is pulling superbly clear out in front. A new fastest lap of the race, in fact, on lap number 5. Blaine Blackwell is trying to go with him, but the gap's already up to over 8 seconds. And the race now is for 3rd position between Jody Burton and Bradley Pocock. Will you believe what a recovery it's been? The rider he was within touching distance of earlier in the race, Craig Dundee, is all the way back in 14th position. Pocock now moves through at the expense of Jody Burton. I can't see him moving much further than that though. Up now into 3rd position, but with 12 seconds to make up on Blaine Blackwell, who sits in 2nd position. That is a scene of sheer misery. That's Cole Howard, I think, further down the order. He was down in 16th position, struggling to get the machine going. These bikes don't necessarily like these torrential wet weather conditions, and neither does Kevin Nielsen, as he suffers another fall further back down the order. He had recovered up to 13th position, and not sure whether he has been able to hold that now. He does look to be just ahead of Craig Dundee, 13th and 14th places. Coming through then to lead the race, Frank Van Homert, over 8 seconds clear of Blaine Blackwell in 2nd position. Blackwell matching Van Homert's pace last lap around. Jody Burton dropping 5 seconds further back, 12 seconds in arrears, but it's Bradley Pocock who has made progress up into 3rd position. Now will Dominic Foreman also be able to find a way past? I cannot believe the extent to which this rain is falling. It is quite incredible now that the riders are maintaining their pace. Well, Frank Van Homert has backed it off slightly on that previous lap, a 1 minute 23 flat, but he's still 10 seconds up on Blaine Blackwell. There's Blaine Blackwell in 2nd position. You can see the rainfall on the lens now. Conditions becoming treacherous. Blackwell more concerned about what's going on behind him, knowing that Bradley Pocock is gaining all the time. In fact, he gained 5 seconds last lap around, would you believe it? Bradley Pocock, 7 seconds still to make up on Blaine Blackwell, who sits in 2nd position. We could be in for a thrilling finish here as Bradley Pocock throws caution to the wind. I'm surprised he's brave enough, given that the championship advantage will still, in bulk, be maintained if he finishes in 3rd position here. Jody Burton versus Dominic Foreman, take 2. This time Foreman comes through, and quite easily as well, for 4th position. Well, Foreman was over 2 seconds faster on that previous lap than Jody Burton. He was only half a second behind him coming over the start-finish line, and comes through quite swiftly to pass Jody Burton, and did a similar portion of the circuit to where he fell last time while attacking Burton. So that's a bit of good news for Dominic Foreman, who's back up into 4th position, which is where he finished in race number 1. It's Bradley Pocock who's the rider on the move, but will he have time to make further progress? They're coming through once again to complete another lap. It's Frank Van Homert who sits out in front. It's Blaine Blackwell who sits in 2nd position. Bradley Pocock's advantage after race number 1 is set to be overturned unless he can get the better of Blaine Blackwell here. He's within striking distance already. Blackwell looking a little bit tentative in these conditions. He's coming round to lap Luke Burton, and Pocock bumps into the side of Blaine Blackwell. Well, he wouldn't wait for an opportunity to make a clean passing manoeuvre. He's straight across the front of Blaine Blackwell and boxes him out. And that, to me, is a signal of intent that he wants to go after the race leader, Frank Van Homert. This would be absolutely incredible. It'll be the ride of the season if Bradley Pocock, in wet weather conditions, can come through. He's gaining 5 seconds a lap at the moment on Frank Van Homert, but he's had a lot of work to do in this race, and the rain is still falling. Does he dare risk continuing to go off at this pace, chasing down the race leader, Frank Van Homert, when he already has the championship lead, remember, and the vast majority of it will be intact regardless of what this race has in store for him. Bradley Pocock coming around the outside now of Kevin Nielsen. Nielsen setting a new personal best on the previous lap, has managed to recover up to 11th position, gaining from the retirement of Pat Crump further down the order. So disappointment for Pat Crump. There's Blaine Blackwell now passing Nielsen. He's relegated to 3rd position. I can't see him gaining on the top 2 from there because he's backed off over the last couple of laps. Now he's getting stuck in traffic with Kevin Nielsen across the front of him, but he does manage to come through to lap Nielsen. Next in line for him is James Cook, who sits in 10th position. So at the end of lap number 8, it's Frank Van Homert who leads the way, ahead of Bradley Pocock in 2nd. Pocock still has 10 seconds to make up, and I can't see him doing it, but he did gain another 2 seconds on that previous lap. Blaine Blackwell gets into difficulties. He's gone down. Has he remounted the machine? It looks as though he is able to continue, but that is going to end his hopes of a top 2 finish, as he was already drifting well back from Frank Van Homert and Bradley Pocock, who sits in second place. So Blackwell drifting away from the leaders, still sits in third position. Will that open an opportunity for either Jody Burton or Dominic Foreman to gain further ground? It's certainly still lively in the closing stages of this race throughout the top 5. I'm not sure, though, that Bradley Pocock will be able to gain enough ground. At the moment, the gap sits at 6 seconds between the top 2. Frank Van Homert, they're coming in to lap Andrew Luke, who sits in 6th place. It's incredible that the race leaders are able to lap right the way up into the top 10, but there he goes, down the inside of Andrew Luke, who's running his own race in P6, well back from Dominic Foreman, who rounds out the top 5. Bradley Pocock really is gaining in here on Frank Van Homert. They're coming in now towards the checkered flag. Will Bradley Pocock have enough time to make up the margin? The answer is no. Frank Van Homert takes race number 2, moves into second in the overall standings for round number 9, and crucially gets the better of his championship rival Bradley Pocock. So there's a look at the standings after the second moto here at round number 9. It's Bradley Pocock who leads the way by 2 points over Frank Van Homert, but that really was a crucial result in the context of the championship overall. Van Homert desperately needing to defeat Bradley Pocock, remembering that he needed to make up 3 points in the 2 remaining races. He's made up 3 points there, and now needs to get the better of Pocock again come race number 3. The final race at round 9 of the 2017 Minibike British Championship, and what could become the title decider. After recovering second place at the expense of Blaine Blackwell last time out, Bradley Pocock need only beat Frank Van Homert here to become British champion for the first time and end a run of 3 successive seasons of title status for Frank Van Homert. The 73-point championship lead has been extended. Can it be defended in race number 3 at the penultimate round of the 2017 campaign? Watch for Pocock versus Van Homert as we get underway. It's Pocock who's first away. Frank Van Homert tucking into second position with them. Blaine Blackwell and Dominic Foreman, the top performers from the opening 2 races of this round as well. The rest of the pack filtering their way through, still in wet conditions here in Kettering, and you can just see how deep it really is for the riders to make their way through. It's Bradley Pocock who leads then, side by side for third position. Dominic Foreman trying to get the better of Blaine Blackwell. In terms of the overall for round 9, coming into this third and final moto, it's Bradley Pocock who leads by 2 points over Frank Van Homert. Blaine Blackwell in third as Dominic Foreman cuts past him down the inside, but Blackwell comes soaring back around the outside to maintain that third place. Blackwell then sits 3 points in arrears of Frank Van Homert here at round 9, 5 points back from Bradley Pocock, so 3 riders still very much in contention for the overall here at round 9. Dominic Foreman with some ground to make up if he wants to achieve podium status at the penultimate event of the season. Races further back through the order, a real battle going on for 7th position. It was Joe Banks who occupied it as they crossed the line for the first time, crossed that timing beam for the first time, but Banks is slipping backwards through the field, and Craig Newton making some progress there, so it looks as though Craig Newton has come up through the field, so he sits in 6th position now at the expense of James Cook, who moves through into 7th place, and Kevin Nielsen up in 8th. That's all further down the field as getting out of shape there, Blaine Blackwell coming through the final sequence of turns to complete another lap, just a little bit out of control, but that you might expect with really slippery surface now, and if you catch a rut the wrong way, it's slippery in those ruts as well deep down. With standing water on the circuit, you can see that the lighter portions of the track, they have seen tyre tracks over the top of them, but they've got water sitting on top as well. Riders really struggling, and coming down the hill, there's no doubt about it either. There's almost trenches going on there, and it's trench warfare up front between the 2 title favourites, Bradley Pocock and Frank Van Homert. Blaine Blackwell versus Dominic Foreman on track, but at the moment it looks as though Pocock is where he needs to be to seal the title. He's up ahead of Frank Van Homert, who sits in 2nd place and is already dropping back. Blaine Blackwell in 3rd position and Dominic Foreman still in 4th. 5th place is with Jody Burton ahead of Craig Newton, and it looks to me as though these top 5 positions in wet conditions are settling down. So Bradley Pocock, the only clean rider still out there, the rest of the pack becoming almost unidentifiable under the mud here in Kettering. But it's Pocock who's blasting clear of all of that, showing the pace he actually has showed throughout this weekend. He couldn't capitalise on it, of course, in race number 2 after a pair of falls. The riders picking their way through treacherous conditions. Looks as though they were just putting a lap there on, I think, Andrew Luke, the number 18, who, after starting pretty well inside the top 10 at the first crossing of the timing beam, has failed to complete a full lap and has ruled himself out of contention. Up front, it's Bradley Pocock who leads ahead of Frank Van Homert in second. Blaine Blackwell looks to be closing in on him, but if Frank Van Homert can't get the better of Bradley Pocock, it's going to mean little in terms of this 2017 title race. Top spot for Bradley Pocock will already be enough to seal the championship for 2017. The riders flashing through once again. It's still second place for Frank Van Homert. He's only one position away from keeping the title race going into the final round of the campaign. Riders stricken around the circuit, struggling to complete the full race distance. Van Homert there ahead of Blaine Blackwell, who tries to go and to clear the goggles once again as he gets filled in, working his way through back markers. Even Bradley Pocock isn't going to stay clean for the whole race distance, because if he ends up in the roost of one of the back markers, he too will get filled in. Frank Van Homert and Bradley Pocock, the only riders whose number boards you can still see on the fronts of their machines. Van Homert looking to the outside of one of the lapped runners. Still torrential rain here in Kettering as further down the order they scrap for positions. James Cook, that is, who sits in 7th place behind Craig Newton, and dropping back from him, Kevin Nielsen working his way up through the field. He sat 10th place early on, but now he is homing in on James Cook, who sits in 7th. So it's Nielsen in 8th position, looking for a move on Cook, who sits in 7th. They're line astern as they come out of the final turn to start another lap. Knee deep almost in the ruts, and around the outside comes Nielsen to put the pass on James Cook. Well, these are traditional British motocross conditions in torrential rain here in Kettering. The riders continuing on with the action. It's Bradley Pocock who still leads the way ahead of Frank Van Homert in second. This is the focus in terms of the championship. The race, though, looking largely settled, and Bradley Pocock will take his 5th round win of the season if he can stay out in front here, but more importantly for him, he'll take the series with a round to spare. Frank Van Homert in second position would finish runner-up at round number 9. It would also leave him still runner-up in the championship chase as well, ahead of Blaine Blackwell. He'll have gained more ground on him as Luke Burton just falls prey there. He'd made good ground up in the early stages of the race, but now begins to drop back. So Kevin Nielsen up ahead of him and up ahead of James Cook. It's Nielsen now in 7th position, Cook down to 8th place. We saw their 9th position with Luke Burton, who dropped behind this pair, and he's continuing to drop back. The fight is between the 291 of James Cook and the rider directly ahead of him, Kevin Nielsen. The rain really playing havoc with rider identification, as not only are the number boards covered up, but the vast majority of the race suits as well. Frank Van Homert still in 2nd position, no doubt about that. The filled-in Blaine Blackwell sits in 3rd position. But it's Bradley Pocock who's managed to break a little bit clear of them now and starts to work his way through the lap runners and through this group that I was talking about that are fighting their way over 7th position. Behind Craig Newton, of course, is the number 22, Kevin Nielsen at the moment, who occupies that place. He's just about to be lapped by Bradley Pocock. He's just about to be overtaken as well. Around the outside of him comes James Cook. So Cook recaptures 7th place. He sat in 7th position at the end of lap number 2, but was then passed by Kevin Nielsen. He's recovered that position. So good effort there from James Cook, who's fought his way back through to 7th place. It's still Nielsen in 8th position. Recovering through the field, Matthew Chamberlain trying to get up through, and I think may have recovered 9th place as well now at the expense of Luke Burton, who has continued to drop back, as I said. Fight for 2nd place, that's the closest on track at the moment inside the top 10. Frank Van Homert holding on ahead of Blaine Blackwell in 3rd, but there's no doubt about who this race winner is going to be. If he keeps it upright, it's going to be Bradley Pocock, and that will be enough to seal the 2017 championship as well. He has excelled in these wet conditions. He survived Mildenhall brilliantly. That was a bike wrecker. It was a title wrecker as well, I would suggest, for Frank Van Homert. Oh, Van Homert in more problems. The Dutchman stopped on the circuit, and that is a look of resignation. He knew that he needed to pass Bradley Pocock to take the title fight to the final round. He's shaking his head in disappointment. Memories of Mildenhall resurfacing for Frank van Homert, who will find himself out of the race and out of the championship fight as well. And even more frustratingly for him, Blaine Blackwell will gain a significant amount of ground by finishing second at round number 9 and may even be able to challenge for second in the championship as well. Dominic Foreman will be another rider to gain from the mechanical misfortune of Frank van Homert. He moves up into third position. That will also release Jody Burton into P4, and Craig Newton will now round out the top 5, barring any further dramas in the remaining laps. We're on now into the closing stages of this one. We're not going to get as many laps as we would have done in the dry conditions earlier on. You can see just how difficult it is for the riders to keep the bike going in a straight line, let alone at the type of speeds they were running earlier on in the day. Coming through there, Blaine Blackwell continuing to lap the runners. He's got a pretty significant margin behind him over Dominic Foreman. He would probably do well to start to relax the pace up a little bit and bring this machine home. He's just come through to lap James Cook, who, remember, was sitting in 7th position. He's now moved up to 6th, of course, at the expense of Frank van Homert, who has retired from this race. He hasn't been able to get that machine back going, and real disappointment for the reigning champion, who sees his title hopes extinguished as Blaine Blackwell just removes his goggles and chucks them on the race surface. And that really is the danger zone. Once you've got the goggles off as well, once your face fills in, you really have got no further recourse. And Blaine Blackwell, well, he's into the closing stages of this race. We're in the final lap now. Bradley Pocock heading towards victory. Victory that will make him the 2017 champion. Blaine Blackwell won't deny him victory at round number 9 either. He will take the runner-up spot though. He came into this race on 42 points. He'll add another 22 to move on to 64. Dominic Foreman will move up and ahead of Frank van Homert by taking third position here. He'll move into third, and the final step on the podium at round 9. Frank van Homert couldn't believe his luck, but Bradley Pocock was already on course towards the championship as the race leader, and he was sitting in the place he needed to become British champion for the first time. The checkered flag falls. Bradley Pocock wins the 2017 Minibike British Championship. Well, second over the line in race number 3, and at round number 9 will be Blaine Blackwell, and Dominic Foreman takes third in the race to seal third in the overall for round number 9. That will reignite the fight for second position in the series standings behind Bradley Pocock, who will head into the final round of the campaign with an unassailable 100-point lead over Frank van Homert. Blaine Blackwell, though, will trail the Dutchman by just 2 points. Meanwhile, further down the order, Dominic Foreman, with his podium appearance, moves up into 4th in the championship classification. So it's disappointment for Frank van Homert, who sees his championship fight end with more disappointment and another mechanical retirement, awarding the title to Bradley Pocock.